Oh, Ray Nick Catiro here. We've gotten to the point in this course where we have to begin to integrate all the material that we've been learning. We cannot just program in a what I refer to as a chapter bubble, meaning that we only have to concern ourselves with chapter 3. Well, if we're working with chapter 3, we got to go back to chapters 1 and 2. And the same thing as we progress forward, we got to take the stuff that we've learned and start integrating it into the stuff that we will be learning. So I'm going to break away from the book. And as I mentioned in previous videos, I want to start doing these videos to kind of break down the classroom lecture. Now, let me go up to my screen. Now, if you look at my screen here, I'm at that DMOJ website. It is a Canadian-based website. They basically harvest a bunch of competition programming tools and contests and problems and stuff like that. And I encourage everybody to kind of go up there and take a look at things and what it is. And I play around with it. I don't have that many points on it, but I think some of the problems are really, really exceptional. So they go through a pretty decent vetting system. Where they get their problems is pretty much all over. A lot of them, if you look here, this is where they get their competitions. They run a lot of these programming competitions. Well, first of all, DMOJ, I just found this out myself. I thought this was clever. DMOJ stands for DMOJ Modern Online Judge. So the first character in the acronym is actually the acronym, so DMA. But if we look at some of these other ones, CCC is Canadian Computing Competition, CCO is Canadian Computing Olympiad, COCI, Croatian Competition in Informatics, IOI, International Olympics Informatics, JOI, Japanese Olympiad in Informatics, ECOO, Education Computing Organization in Ontario. I just kind of throw out those acronyms. It really, but more importantly is they harvest a lot of these problems. So if you're interested in programming, or even if you're just interested in problem solving, and that's, to me, is the most important part of these classes. Yes, we can code and we can learn all the mechanics of coding, but it's really the problem solving involved with this. Now, the problem we're going to look at is it's called When You Eat Your Smarties. ECOO just stands for Education Computing Organization in Ontario or of Ontario. 15 is the year, and these are just particular numbers and parts. But let's break this down before we start coding, because I know if people read this, they might get a little overwhelmed, and maybe justifiably so, but if we break it down, we shouldn't have a problem. A little silliness here. This is when I eat my Smarties, I always eat the red ones last. I separate them into color groups and start by eating the orange ones, the blue ones, the yellow ones, pink, violet, brown. I don't think I've ever seen a brown Smartie. And finally, the red. The red ones are the best, so I eat them slowly, one at a time. The color I eat quickly by the handful. You know, my hand only can hold 7 Smarties. Must be a small hand. I always finish all the Smarties of one color before I move on to the next. So something in the last handful of color isn't a full one. There's a lot there, and it may seem, kind of silly, but in reality, they provide a lot of information. That opening paragraph basically kind of gave a summation of what we're doing here. We're dealing with counting something or organizing something. We have a bunch of colors, right? Orange, blue, green. They just threw a bunch of colors in there. So it looks like we're probably going to have to sort them, because this particular individual likes to organize what they eat, and they save the red ones for last. And then they get into some other ones. They say, but wait, there's more. I have turned my smart eating into a science. I know it always takes me exactly 13 seconds to eat a handful of non-red Smarties, and I adjust my chewing rate that I always take 13 seconds even if my hand is not completely full. So they're basically saying is we're going to sort these things in colors. And then we're going to eat 7 at a time. And every time we eat 7 of them, it's going to take 13 seconds. When I eat the red ones, I like to take my time. So it takes me exactly 16 seconds to each individual red Smartie. I can't stop laughing at this. I'm sorry. I have a big box of Smarties. I have finished sorting the colors. How long will it take for me to eat? Wow, that seems like a lot. So let's really break it down. Well, let's keep reading, then we'll break it down. The input will contain 10 cases. Each test case will start with the letter N, 50 between 50 and 200, with each line holds a color of single Smartie in lowercase. Then the last line will read end of box, meaning that there's no more Smarties in the box to read. Now let's really break this down. Initially, what they're saying is we take a box of Smarties, and a lot of us do this, because we take a box of Smarties and we organize them. And that box can hold anywhere between 50 to 200 Smarties. Okay, that's a good number to know, but you notice that it's random. All right, it's between 50 and 200. It could be 51, it could be 75, it could be 122. So we don't know that. So we grab a box of Smarties. We don't know how many are in there. Think of this in real terms. We grab that box of Smarties. We don't know in there, and we begin to organize them. So we grab one Smartie at a time, and we put them into piles. How many colors they got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 colors. And every time we grab a Smartie, we're going to put them in one of those 8 piles. Then, after we've established the 8 piles, we're going to take handfuls of Smarties, basically 7 at a time, and eat them, and count the number of seconds that are associated with it. Now, I know a lot of your heads are probably spinning here. Boy, this just seems like a really difficult problem. Then they throw in this factor. There'll be 10 test cases. Let me change that. Let me change the verbiage on that just a little bit. There's 10 boxes of Smarties, right? So they're going to give us basically 10 boxes of Smarties, and 1 box at a time. We're not going to take all 10 boxes, open them up, dump them into a bowl, and work them. No, we're going to take 1 box at a time. We're going to pull that box, open it up, spill it out, put the Smarties in our piles, and then, once they're organized, we're going to pop in 7 at a time. We're going to calculate how long it takes to each 1 box. When we're done with 1 box, we're going to go to the next box, and we're going to do the exact same thing with the second box. We're going to open it up, take 1 Smartie at a time, organize it into piles, and then we're going to eat 7 Smarties at a time until we get to the red Smarties, which we then eat 1 Smartie at a time. And then we go on to box 3. Boy, that sounds like a loop. Right? Don't worry about the if logic here yet. We'll cover that. We're going to cover that in a second video. In this first video, I am just concerned with opening up 1 box at a time and organizing that box. So we open up 1 box, and we basically put the Smarties in each individual colors. In the second video, if you choose to watch it, because this video is more about looping, but the second video, if you choose to watch it, let's see how long it would take to eat these Smarties. So let's head up to my screen. All right, let's take a look at my screen here. And there's probably nothing more terrifying to a creator, whatever that may be, than a blank screen, a blank canvas, a blank piece of paper. So hopefully as we're going through this content, you realize that there's those small parts, those little increments you can take to get over just staring at this blank screen. Now, in this video, I did say that we are just going to concentrate on the while loop and then the for loops, actually the looping, the iteration as a whole. So let's just worry about that. The other logic I'll cover in the second video. And the second video will be somewhat optional, but all right. So we're staring at this, and let me get my little cheat pad going. What do we want to do? Well, we basically, again, reiterate this, no pun intended. We want to grab 10 boxes of Smarties. And in those Smarties, we want to, each box, we want to basically count or separate the individual Smarties. Now, before we go any further, I want to go someplace. I want to go to Wikipedia real quickly. And I'm going to go to Smarties. Let's investigate Smarties. Now, most of us are familiar with the Smarties here. There's only, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 colors. But in reality, if we go back, sorry about this, there's a British version of Smarties that are more attuned to our M&Ms, and that's where we get the colors here. So on the problem statement, they talk about all these different colors. Well, remember that Canada is a commonwealth of Great Britain or the United Kingdom, so they have different Smarties. So if you ever Niagara Falls or up in Canada, if you ask for Smarties, you're going to get something that looks more like an M&M than our little tablets. But anyways, let's go back to here, right? Kind of trivia there. We know, let's again, going to go through this a little bit quicker. We know we're going to have to use the scanner. We know we're going to create a main class. We know we're going to have a main method. So I'm going to speed things up a little bit. I'm going to use our friend copy and paste. All right. I'm going to square up my brackets. So let's make sure everything lines up just fine. All right. So basically I have a blank canvas here. I have I'm importing scanner. I'm instantiating a new scanner called SCNR. You saw that in all my videos. I keep harping on that. What are we trying to do? Let's break that down to a small manageable parts. We're trying to count Smarties. We're trying to grab a Smartie from a box, see what color it is, put it in a pile, and then eventually just count as we're putting it in a pile. So right off the bat, we're going to need some integers to do the counting. And I'm going to go here. I'm going to say int, give it int orange Smarties. And we're going to just assign it as 0. And we would do that for all the colors of our Smarties. So again, this is Java. We have to initialize, create an integer called what we're going to use. To save a little time, I'll use my friend copy and paste because it's pretty much the same line over and over again. So we're creating integers for the oranges, for the blues, the greens, yellows, the pinks, violets, browns. All right. Now what do we need to do? Well, the next thing we need to do is grab that first Smartie. Now, even before that, we don't want to immediately jump into trying to figure this out for 10 boxes. We just want to do 1 box at a time, and we don't know how many Smarties can be in that box. There could be anywhere between 50 to 200. This calls for a while loop. This is an indefinite loop, so this definitely calls for a while loop because we're going to keep going to the box until we get the phrase end of box, or we reach the end of box. To reach out for those each individual Smarties, guess what we need to do? Well, we need to first create that string Smartie. All right. And then what we need to do is we need to capture it. We need to scan for it. So we're going to say Smartie is going to be equal to scanner. That's our scanner object up here. And just get the next line. Okay, make sure I type everything right. Get the entire next line. So we created a variable called Smartie, an individual variable. Now, as we keep working towards stuff, we want to keep in mind that our variable names are going to be very important. We're looking at a box of Smarties, plural, but we're only going to be grabbing 1 Smartie, and that just makes our code more readable. Now I'm going to do something. I'm going to pre-plan a little bit here. And you're going to probably think it's kind of a little redundant, but you'll see why as we finish this particular video. I'm going to reassign all those Smarties to 0. All right, we're going to reassign them. Now, you might be thinking, what is Nick up to? Bear in mind, I'm kind of pre-planning. Right now, I'm just working with one box of Smarties. What happens when I want to work with 10 boxes of Smarties? So this is kind of like a pre-planning for that. Now let's get into our while loop. And our while loop, we're going to say while. And if you remember from the previous videos, I know this sounds a little backwards, but when we test for a string, the is equal or equals of the string will return a true if it is found or a false if it's not found. And the while statement, we want to keep running until we find that false. Again, I know this tends to drive people crazy, but I'm going to start off with while Smarty dot equals end of box. But what that's going to do is it's never going to go into, let me put my braces. It's never going to go into this while until it gets the end of box. And so we have to negate that. We have to negate that. If we don't negate it, it's never going to go into that while because it's always going to return a false. Right now, this statement is going to be false because it's going to grab a pink Smartie. Is pink Smartie equal to end of box? No, it's a false. So we don't get into a while statement. So we have to basically invert that by negating it. And we're saying we grab a pink Smartie. It's not the end of the box, so we can flip it with here so it becomes true. Now we can jump into the while. I know that's very confusing. Every time I go through it myself, it is extremely confusing. But on the other hand, it's the logic that we have to work with. Now, we need to count those Smarties. And we're going to do a little bit different. The book touched base on it very, very quickly, but we know there is what? 8 different colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We know there is 8 different colors of Smarties. Could we do an if else, if else, if else? Yeah, but Java gives us a tool called the switch tool. And what we can do is we can say switch, and in there we say Smartie. And again, we get our open and close brackets there. And now we do case statements. And we say case orange. And what that's basically doing is it's saying we look at the Smartie and then we can switch to a different case based upon the value of that Smartie. If the Smartie is an orange, if the case of the Smartie is an orange, then we are just going to increment by 1 that Smartie. But now the next thing we knew is we break out of it, right? We're jumping out of that case statement. If we don't jump out of that case statement, it could cause issues in other logic. It would just keep flowing through, but that would be unproductive. Well, what are some of the other cases that we would have? Well, we have a case where it's blue, and we do the exact same thing. Blue, Smarties, increment by 1, break out of it. And through the magic of cut and paste, I'm going to do the other colors. From my other screen, my hidden screen. Make sure that we all line up here. So if it's orange, count the orange. If it's blue, count the blues. Green, count the greens. Yellows, count the yellows. Pink, count the pinks. Violet, count the violets. Brown, brown, red. And again, we get into the break. Now, if we were just to stop here, right, at this point, we would run into that infinite loop problem. You remember, we primed the pump up here. We grabbed the very, very first Smartie. But now we have to grab the next one and the next one and the next one. If we don't, it's just going to assume that Smartie will never change and we will get into that infinite loop. See my previous videos. So after we've tested everything out, we're going to say Smartie equals scanner next line. Right? So grab another Smartie. That's what I'm basically doing here. So this is going to loop through all where's the while loop? Right here. This is going to loop through that one box. So we grab a box, only one box, and we count the number of Smarties in the box. How can we verify this? Well, let's print some out, right? Where are we? We're going to say system out print line. We'll just do a blank line there. And then we'll say system out print line. And we'll use the format orange Smarties space plus the orange Smartie, the value for the orange Smarties. Again, to save time and effort, I'm going to use my friend copy and paste here. So not just for, we'll say here. All right. So let's go through this logic a little bit. We grab a Smartie. First of all, we grab a Smartie and then we wipe out all the values of any residual information that we start at 0. Grab it, and then we check. If it's the end of the box, we stop. If it's not the end of the box, use this switch logic. And the switch logic says, in the case that the color is orange, increment orange Smarties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we grab the next Smartie and we keep iterating through the loop. Again, it's an indefinite loop. We don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know how many Smarties. We have a rough estimate, 50 to 200, but we don't have a specific amount. And then when we're done with the loop, we kick out the number of Smarties. Now, hopefully my braces all line up. If not, you'll probably see that big cut again. And let's run this. And sometimes a blind squirrel finds an acorn. So I'm going to type in a Smartie, red, red, blue, end of box. And you can see we have 1 blue Smartie and 2 red Smarties. Let's test this with more data than me sitting here and typing between 50 to 200. And if you remember from my previous videos about really quick auto grader, if I go to, I've already kind of snuck around here and I've created some some dummy data here. And I'm going to shrink this up a little bit and let me clear this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Java and I'm going to say main Java. And if I just run this here, we get into the situation where it's kind of waiting for me to put information in. Red, red, end of box, right? But I can redirect information from text files. So let's take a look at small box. Small box has basically 26 Smarties in it. That might be a good place to start. So I'll go to shell and I will say Java. And I will say main Java, redirect the small box into main Java. Give it a second. And those values add up. I have my little sheet here. So that's kind of like test data. I know it's working for a small box. I want it to work for a much bigger box. This was only 25 or was it 25 Smarties. I wanted to work for a much bigger box. So guess what? I created a text file over here with over 80 Smarties in it, and I still have that end of the box. So again, we're going to say 01 box, txt, give it a little time, and we counted up the Smarties. I want this. I want this data. And in this data, we have 10 boxes of Smarties, 10 end of boxes, ranging in between 50 to 200. That's my goal for this video. Now, if I go back to my code, and let me shrink all this stuff up. If I go back to my code, this does 1 box. I want to do 10 boxes. That is screaming a definite loop. Indefinite, we don't know how many Smarties are in a given box. We know 50 to 200, but we have specific. But we know there's 10 boxes on the shelf. So that's probably, not probably, that's definitely a definite loop. So we're going to use the for loop. And again, the premise of this video is not to really solve this problem. It's kind of cool solving this problem. But the premise of this video is to look at loops and how they're used. And now we're going to actually be embedding this while loop within, or we say nesting, we're nesting the while loop inside the for loop. And we're going to start by here. Remember I said this stuff down here was kind of redundant, right? Not really, because I'm going to put my for logic right here. And I'm going to say I is going to start at 0, right? We're familiar with that. And keep iterating through as long as I is less than 10. So we start at 0 and we go to 9. So that gives us 10 boxes or 10 iterations. And we are going to increment our variable I. I should, actually, I missed a step here. All right. So integer I starts at 0, increment until it's greater than 10 or greater than 10. So it'd be 0 through 9. That would be 10. And let's put a bracket here. And here's where Java always gets a little tricky. I need to indent all this stuff. I don't need to indent the stuff, but I'm going to indent the stuff to make it a little bit more readable. And then I'm going to put my brace here. So if I check my braces, yeah, it's lining up. That new brace is lining up with the for. This should be lining up with the main, method. And this should be lining up, this last one should be lining up with the class. So I'm feeling safe. If you see a big cut in the video, I apologize there. So now, I don't want to run. I'm going to show you a little trick here to save a little time inside Replit. I can compile, remember Java is a compilation language. I can compile Java directly, or that code directly, and I can just say Java C main.java. And what this is going to do is make sure that I'm keeping everything legitimate, and it appeared to compile. Now I want to redirect that data. Let me go back, and if you remember, I have this box of 10. All right, I don't need to see the code anymore. So let me clear the screen. And if I say Java, main Java, redirect those boxes of 10, those 10 boxes. You know what? I don't want to run that yet. I want to just make it a little bit cleaner. So let me go back to, I was just thinking about something. I always do this when I code. I'm going to make this just a little bit cleaner. I'm just going to say system out print, and I'm going to put like a blank line there. All right. Just make it a little bit cleaner. Since I made the change, guess what I got to do? I got to recompile. Let me close this up. I'm going to use 10 boxes here. This beast over here. Slide this over here. Right. Let's run. Sorry for the big giant cut there. Let's run this again. And let's say Java, main Java, and redirect the 10 boxes. Give it a second here. And there's my 10 boxes. I can make it prettier. I can say, show me box 1, box 2. The key concept here for this particular video is we embedded or nested a indefinite loop or while loop inside our definite loop, the repeat loop. Before we go to the ending of the video, Can we do this in Zybooks? It doesn't have that interactive feel to it. Yes, we can. I'm going to be real quick about this. I'm going to copy and paste. So I'm going to take everything, I'm going to copy this over to my Zybooks IDE, right? The exact same code. Not going to change anything, no smoke and mirrors. But the problem is here. How do we input all those 10 boxes, especially when the data starts getting a large? Well, what I can do is I can basically copy and paste all those Smarties over to here, right? I encourage people to explore the different IDEs and things. Now, are you going to be redirecting input in this regard? No, that's what the auto graders are for. But I like to show you how we test things in the background. Can you experiment with them? Absolutely. So anyways, I just basically did a copy and paste of the program and I copy and paste of the data. Let's run this. And we get the same results. So again, experiment. I know a lot of you are using IntelliJ and some people are using Eclipse. It's great platforms to practice this material. Now, let's go to the wrap up of this video. Thank you. All right, let's wrap up part one of this two-part video with, we haven't gotten into that logic about the counting of times and all, and that's fine. Remember, this set of videos is more about loops. We just concentrated on a indefinite loop, the while loop, counting our Smarties, basically counting them by colors, and then adding a definite loop of 10 boxes. In the next video, if you want to watch it, I encourage you to watch it. Let's add the logic from the actual problem from the website. That being said, let's go on to the next video and let's go out and learn something. Thank you.